There's a new report tonight that United States Attorney John Durham has interviewed the former top FBI lawyer for the Russia investigation twice in recent weeks. His name is James Baker. The results of Durham's criminal probe into the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation could be known by Labor Day, maybe before, maybe after. Let's talk about the new development with Florida Congressman Greg Steube. He is on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks very much. I want to play a soundbite from President Trump talking to our own Maria Bartiromo, and then I'll get your reaction. Here it is.
If you do not win in November, we're not going to hear another word about this. So should AG Barr put in a special counsel to ensure that this
definitely. They'll probably cancel it out almost definitely. They spied on my campaign, which is treason. They spied both before and after I won. Think of that. Using the intelligence apparatus of the United States to take down a president, a legally elected president, a duly elected president of the United States.
Congressman, what about the first part? If Biden is elected, does this investigation and any indictments therefrom magically disappear?
Oh, absolutely it would, and the president's 100% correct. Just think for a moment, if Hillary Clinton would have won, all of these same people would still be involved in the DOJ and our intelligence community at the highest level, and the American people wouldn't even know that any of this happened. We wouldn't even know that the DOJ and the FISA court was politicized to spy on the Trump campaign. We wouldn't know any of that. So thank God that Trump won, and we saw that at the highest levels in the DOJ and the intelligence community, they went and intentionally tried to take down Flynn and did take him down. They went after all of these individuals and spied on American citizens using and politicizing the Department of Justice and our intelligence community. And thank God that Trump won so that that was all exposed and all those actors are no longer in those different communities.
As I mentioned, Durham has been interviewing James Baker, former general counsel for the FBI, who said he scrupulously examined the first FISA warrant to make sure it was proper. I guess then he didn't notice the 17 errors, omissions, misrepresentations, and lies. In fact, Congressman, as you know, in the appendix, there's more than 50 of them. What do you make of Baker?
Yeah, so if he completely oversaw all of that, then he's also to blame for the misrepresentations, the inaccuracies, and the failing of advising the FISA court of exculpatory information, failing to advise a court that is surveilling the American people and American citizens of information that the reports that they based all of this information on was bought for and paid by the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign, and that was used as a basis. And they knew at that time that it was inaccurate, and they still moved forward with it. And that just goes to show you how politicized the deep state was in the DOJ and the FBI.
Beyond the corruption, abuse of power, and malfeasance at the FBI, there were others involved in this. Would you point the finger at people like former CIA Director John Brennan, who appears to have been the instigator of the Russia hoax and who may have politicized intelligence to target Trump?
Well, first of all, if any of these actors and any of these individuals who you've heard their name many times on many different news programs, if any of them lied to Congress, if they lied to the American people, if they falsified documents or knew that documents were false and represented them to be true, they all should be held criminally responsible. And if they're not held criminally responsible, that's not going to prevent that type of atrocity from happening again. So absolutely. And I've done a few investigations in my time as a JAG officer, and usually you work yourself up to those that are the biggest examples and those who you want to indict later in your investigation. So hopefully Durham is making his way to those individuals who acted the most egregiously in all of these things that have happened.
Very quickly, Lindsey Graham says he has now spoken with FBI Director Christopher Wray, and Wray is going to be forthcoming with documents and information and witnesses. My Lord, Wray has been FBI Director for 2 years. Why wasn't he forthcoming before instead of ignoring the demands of people like Graham and others in Congress?
Well, yeah, and why did it take the presiding chairman of the Judiciary Committee to subpoena documents, to ask for information and not be forthcoming about it. If the Democrats weren't in control of the House and the Republicans had control of the House and Jim Jordan, instead of being the ranking member, was the chairman, we'd have Jim Comey sitting before the Judiciary Committee and answering tough questions from Republican members. But none of that's happening because the House is run by Democrats. So we have to rely upon Lindsey Graham and the other Republicans in the Senate to get this information. And we would hope that after 2 years, the FBI would be a lot more forthcoming with the information under Trump's administration.
Christopher Wray was knee-deep in all of this, in the cover-up and the deceptions. I said it before, I'll say it again, he should have been fired a long time ago. Congressman Greg Steube, thanks very much.